Say it ain't snow. Again. We're tracking another winter weather outbreak in the Carolinas. Coming up.
Hey everyone, the NASCAR Cup Series starts again this week at the Bowman.
That's right. It does. And we'll get to Scotty coming up. It does. Scotty's ready to tell us about NASCAR. But first, I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is Wednesday, January the 28th, the final week of January, and we are once again talking about more winter weather impacting both North Carolina and South Carolina. It's the second or third weekend in the row, depending on how you are counting. So coming up, we're going to get you what we know on this Wednesday night about the storm and its impacts. And we're also hoping to talk with Greg Fishel, who was on last week, and he's hoping he's going to be able to join us back by popular demand because Raleigh could be one of those bullseye for this storm. Sam Walker in the Outer Banks could be one of the bullseye for this storm. And there's still cards on the table that Frank might get some snow. Or Tampa, Florida. This thing's all over the place. Some of you might be rooting for snow. Some of you, like me, just kind of want to sleep in on Saturday. But Frank, what are we looking at? Are we looking at another big potential for a weekend storm?
Yeah, it's looking likely that we're going to have to deal with another winter storm this weekend. This time it's going to be a little different than what we had last weekend, and that the setup is going to favor snow. That's not to say that we might not see it start as some rain in some areas. That's particularly true in South Carolina. We may see a little bit of rain Saturday at the onset. We might also see a little bit of sleet and freezing rain along the coast in parts of the Carolinas, but not for long. There's not going to be a lot of ice buildup. It won't be of great consequence, except to maybe make some bridges and overpasses really slick, thanks to a minor ice buildup on them. But what we expect to see primarily is a snowstorm, which is the kind of winter storm that a lot of people want to see. Nobody really wants to see the ice. Because it knocks your power out. So hopefully no scenes like what we have in my background right now, and hopefully white and actually pretty. So where's this coming from? Well, looking at the satellite view across North America, here I had to do a wide angle view because the storm that is heading our way is actually this little feature way up here over Hudson Bay and moving southward into the Canadian prairies tonight. That will be diving straight southward. Through the Midwestern part of the country and into the Tennessee Valley over the next 48 hours, and then through the Carolinas from there. In addition, there are a couple of other players on the field. There's a storm over here over the northeastern Pacific Ocean that could supply a little bit of moisture and energy into the situation as it goes over the ridge out west and then dives southward. And then also we have a little bit of energy in the southern stream here as well, and moisture from the more tropical areas of the Pacific that could feed into the storm. And those are the questions here. How much energy are we going to have come together? How much moisture are we going to have available? How intense will the storm be? How quickly will it get its act together? All those questions play into what we are potentially dealing with this weekend, with how much snow will fall, and it's in question. But the model trends have been toward a more substantial storm. So let's take a look at one of them, for example. Use the GFS, which is actually done a halfway decent job with the storm. We've been bashing the GFS a lot lately because it hasn't done very well lately, but it's actually done okay with this one. It kind of caught on a little faster than the Euro. We haven't seen very much of that lately. But anyway, the GFS shows that storm. It doesn't really show up well because there's not much happening with it on early Friday morning, and then on into the day Friday. It starts to light up with some precipitation over Kentucky and Tennessee later in the day Friday, and the Carolina mountains as the storm, the upper level support still back here over Missouri and Iowa and Illinois at this point, but then it kind of rotates around the upper trough into the Carolinas, and then during the day Saturday, things light up like a Christmas tree here over the Carolinas, with a lot of precipitation breaking out and it being cold enough for snow, and actually really cold. It looks like our surface temperatures are going to be in the 20s for the most part in South Carolina, and maybe even some teens in North Carolina. Like really cold storm for us. So that is the way things go, and the thing kind of bombs out and becomes one of these nor'easter type storms right over Sam's part of the world there, over the Outer Banks, before it then kind of departs to the east on Sunday. So with the storm blowing up over us, we have kind of two separate problems. Well, two problems that work together to cause us a lot of hassles. Number one, snow, and potentially a good bit of it. A dry, powdery snow, so it's not going to be good for making snowballs or snowmen. On the other hand, if you absolutely have to drive on it, dry, powdery snow, you can get a little bit of traction on that. So still, that's an emergency only thing. But if you had no choice but to go out, your odds fare better in dry, powdery snow than they do in the slop that we usually see in the Carolinas. So when we get a snowstorm. But the other problem is it's going to get windy, and that'll be a problem out Sam's way. But it'll be a problem everywhere else too, just not as severe as it will be out at the Outer Banks. But with these stronger winds, that's going to result in blowing and drifting snow, something we don't really see a whole lot of here in the Carolinas. But even after the storm ends, it's going to stay kind of windy through the day Sunday. And so we'll see more blowing and drifting snow, keeping the road slippery even into Sunday night. So that makes things even more difficult for the DOT crews. Behind the storm, high pressure builds in. We're cold but dry Monday into Tuesday. And so the snow is still there. It's melting slowly, but at least it's quiet otherwise. Next storm comes in, it looks like Tuesday night into Wednesday. Probably not cold enough for any more winter weather, but some of the models say it will be, so we'll keep an eye on that. But let's deal with the bigger fish we have to fry over the weekend for now. James?
And Frank, you started telling us about this fish, I guess it was on Saturday or Sunday night, our last special edition of the Carolina Weather Group, which came to you over the weekend because we were dealing with that big ice storm. And you were telegraphing that the signals were pointing to this forthcoming scenario. And here we are on the table. Now, I know lots of you at home are probably wanting to know, how much snow am I going to get? And it's a little early. It's Wednesday right now. You might be watching this back on Thursday or Friday when snowfall accumulation will be a little bit more concrete. We're kind of right on the cusp of where we like to get comfortable with numbers. And without going down an entire rabbit hole, why won't you just tell me how much snow we're going to get? Well, because then later you're going to come back and tell us we were wrong. Because this far out, the numbers are wildly all over the place, which I know that these two guys could join me in an hours-long rant about whether or not last weekend's forecast was a bust or a boom or whatever. But I will just say, anytime you look at an app or a weather model or even somebody who claims to know 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out how much snow we're going to get, it's likely to not be true. So what we're prepared to do tonight on this Wednesday is give you chances of where we think we could see impacts. Chances of 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not to say that these are absolutes for certain locations, but we do think that they're helpful to help you prepare for what you might need this weekend. And I admit, you might be prepared for this weekend if you still have supplies on hand from last weekend, because maybe you didn't need as many supplies as you thought. That's probably good news in the grand scheme of life. Did I see a lot of people returning generators to Home Depot and Lowe's on Monday? Yes, I did, Sam. Yes, I did. I guess they decided there will be no more storms for the rest of eternity. I'm pinning some comments right now in our live chat. We'll circle back around to the thoughts and all of that. But let me just pop up real fast before we go out to Sam Walker, because that's one of the areas we think could be heavily impacted by the storm. And I want to show folks, again, a probability of seeing at least minor winter weather impacts. And this comes to us from NOAA. And you can see that most of the Carolinas have a over 90% chance of seeing minor winter weather impacts. Now, minor winter weather impacts are probably not super impactful, but I think it's also safe to say that a lot of us will see moderate or major, depending on how much snow we get and how fast we can clear it. All of this coming on top of really cold temperatures, which, if you're like me, means that the ice is still hanging around in the shadows. So, Sam, let's start with... Did Sam just drop out? I think Sam's resetting his microphone.
Sam is having technical issues,
Okay.
and will
All right.
and is refreshing his page.
Hey, Sam, you got us now?
I got you now. Yeah, I had an issue with the microphone there. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's
Yeah.
okay. And you are back, and I'm going to see if I can change your microphone for you, which I think is a power that I have because we're getting like room webcam noise. How about now?
Requested.
All right.
Perfect.
There
All
we
right, so
Hi.
Sam Walker. Hi, Sam.
Hi. Let it blow. Let it blow. Let it snow.
Yeah, I mean, this thing could blow up right over
Man.
you out there on the Outer Banks. I mean, you guys had a reprieve for the most part with the last weekend storm. You were one of the areas that saw rain. But this time it seems like you could be in for actual snow this weekend.
Yeah, and this is the classic setup for us to get snow. It's got to be one of these that starts south and comes right up the coast, and everything is lining up for pretty significant event. We want to try and rate history, or at least put a little history behind when we get something like this and think, okay, well, this might be like this and this might be like that. And it's hard not to do that. But when earlier this afternoon, as we started to get a little more idea from the National Weather Service and getting closer to the event, starting to get into that 72-hour window, I've seen things starting to mention 1980. I've seen things starting to mention 1989, Christmas 1989, March 1st, 1980. Then going back to 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years ago. First week, the only time there has been a blizzard warning issued for the northeastern corner of the state. And in fact, the only time that the Wakefield National Weather Service office has ever issued a blizzard warning was 8 years ago for a system just like this that caused 8 to 10 inches of snow on the Outer Banks and brought us strong winds in excess of 40 miles an hour, sustained with gusts as high as 50. We're still outside the window where we can confidently, or at least have a better bit of confidence on what the wind speeds are going to be. Not only wind speeds, but wind direction. That's a great graphic that kind of that shows what happens. Brad put that up on WCNC, where the track, depending on where the center of circulation with one of these lows tracks, is going to dictate what happens with the three scenarios. Now, that nothing track should be probably with an asterisk. Nothing meaning snow. For us here on the Outer Banks, we've got three things we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be dealing with wintry precipitation, likely snow, maybe a little rain mixes in at times to start on Saturday, maybe mixes in a little bit. It looks like right now there might be two different bursts of precipitation. What we're really worried about is obviously snow and what it can do to the roads, what it can do to these long bridges we have out here, which are 3+ miles long in some places, but also the wind impact, which it could have issues with power lines, even with the dry snow that, any type of precipitation and cool temperatures out here, we do get that dancing power lines out here. Because we've got long areas that are wide open with nothing but water right next to them for miles. We've got, just inland, large, expansive areas of farmland over flat terrain. But we also have the wave impact and the coastal flooding impact. Right now, we don't really know which side of the Outer Banks might see the coastal flooding, and that's all dictates on what the wind direction is. If it's a northeast wind or even a north wind, we're probably looking at an oceanside impact, especially on those coastal flood prone areas, the overwash prone areas south of Oregon Inlet, Hatteras Island, and down to Ocracoke Island. If it's more of a northwesterly component, then we're looking at a soundside flood threat, which would impact folks from Hatteras, or basically Buxton, which is where Cape Hatteras is, and Frisco and Hatteras Village and Ocracoke, and then on down east into Harkers Island and places like that in Carteret County. So we're still outside that area, that confidence area, if you will, of what direction the wind's going to be. And again, that goes back to dictate what precipitation type we get out of this system. But if you look at everything, and as Frank mentioned earlier, these models are kind of coming together with what's going to what may happen, and we're starting to talk percentiles. Man, I haven't seen the charts that we came out with from the National Weather Service office in Newport. I haven't seen charts like that in a while, when they're putting us, the northeast corner of North Carolina, including the Outer Banks, at least the northern beaches, with a 50% chance of an 8+ inch snow event. That's what we got today. And almost a 100% chance of 1 inch, and almost 80% chance of 4 inches plus. And then again, a 50-50 chance of 8 inches plus. That's what we got today. That was kind of a little shock to the system, as cold as it's been, and with the winds like they've been off and on the last couple of days out here. You walk out the door, it's a shock to the system. It was a real shock to the system to see that stuff come in.
Yeah, if that comes to fruition, that's going to be a lot of snow, especially for the Outer Banks. As Sam was talking, I was showing the GFS model just again to kind of paint a picture, a broad picture. As Sam mentioned, there are some weird dry slots in it. Where do those set up? There are some bands in it. Where do those set up? Those could make a big difference. Let's bring in Frank Strait. He's in Columbia, South Carolina. And I think we also have Greg Fishel, who's joining us once again this week from Raleigh. And I think Greg is getting set up there as he might be. Are you in the car, Greg?
There you go.
Can you see me at all?
I see your steering wheel.
That means I have to reverse it, right?
Presumably. Otherwise, it would be real interesting just to kind of
free advertisement for Toyota.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is on my side, I can see tiny little thumbnails of everybody, and I was trying to figure out in the tiny little thumbnail what I was looking at. I was like, that's definitely not a face. So, Greg's out and about because. Yeah. No, you're good. I will admit it's sometimes a little tricky to figure out on the phone. I think there should be a little settings gear to flip it around or something. But Sam, let me ask you about some of the positioning of these bands and these dry slots. I mean, you just mentioned that there's a chance that you guys somewhere could see 8 inches of snow. But I mean, like, what's the contrast that we could see from location A to location B, depending on who gets a band of heavy snow and who happens to be in a more dry slot?
Or a wet slot, if you will. Because out here, we obviously are dealing with the Gulf Stream being nearby still, which is good. It has a little bit of an influence. A little bit of influence. That's the energy that this low is going to feed off of, is when it gets out over the Gulf Stream and bombs out. That's if so. I'll start at Cape Hatteras because everybody can see that on the map of North Carolina. They know where Cape Hatteras is. Hatteras, we call it Hatteras Village, which is on down a little bit from Cape Hatteras. Frisco, Buxton, that's Cape Hatteras. At Cape Hatteras, it may be a rain event for a good portion of this, and then change to snow as we see the wind start to whip around more to a northerly direction than a less northeasterly direction. They could still see 4 inches there. If one track comes into play, and that's where it all goes back to where's the track. You get on up farther north on Hatteras Island to Rodanthe, Waves, and Salvo. They may see 6 inches. You get across Oregon Inlet, things really start to get fun. And that, of course, is where Nags Head, Killable Hills, Kitty Hawk, Manteo, Duck, Southern Shores. Those areas, it's the snow total start going up. As you move inland, you start looking at where Elizabeth City is. It's interesting that I've noticed a couple of the one map we got earlier this afternoon, that Elizabeth City, which is only 15 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, actually had a lower snowfall total than easterly areas where I am in Currituck and Corolla, those areas. And if we wanted to slide on up into Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, they're in the higher totals right now. So it's interesting to see where those dry slots, and I know, what, dry air played a big role in what happened last weekend.
It did.
At one point, those thunderstorms that blew up along the Gulf had a big role in that. Do we see anything like that out of this? I mean, there's a lot of factors that are going to play into this, whether we see this 8+ inch event and where we see it. You get a little farther inland and interior sections, it's going to be all snow for here in the northeast corner of the state. Then we start talking about, are we talking double digits, which could easily happen. So again, it goes back to where this thing's going to go, and then what direction the wind is. We're definitely going to get blown out. And I want to give you something here that gives me a little more confidence that this is going to be a rain event to start for the beach, a snow event for everybody else west of the Sounds, and then a snow event for the beaches Sunday on, late Saturday night, Sunday. I'm looking right now at the weather for the coastal marine forecast for the waters south of Oregon Inlet to Cape Hatteras, out 20 nautical miles. Saturday, northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, gust up to 35 knots, increasing to 45 knots. And rain Saturday night, north Saturday night at 35 to 45, gust to 50, increasing to 60 knots after midnight. Now, this is just offshore. Snow Sunday, northwest 35 to 45 knots, snow mainly in the morning, and then it's tapering off with a chance of snow in the evening, and still northwest 25 to 35. So those winds for a 48-hour period, that's four high tide cycles. Roughly four high tide cycles. So again, it looks like this is going to be definitely snow for just about everybody. Maybe Hatteras and Ocracoke get a little bit more rain out of this. And then those wind directions may play a role in whether or not we see any very major impacts along the ocean front. I'm thinking there's going to be some water coming up in Hatteras Village and in Ocracoke Village Saturday night, or really Sunday. Northwest always plays a role. But if it blows hard northwest, they get that Pamlico Sound water into the villages. And we're not talking about 3, 4, 5 feet here. We're talking about a foot, 2 foot. It's nuisance flooding is what we call it, because again, I'll just say it. Sunday on the Outer Banks, wind blows, the water comes up. I mean, it's
guys have had a lot of coastal flooding over the last 12 months. That's for sure. I want to talk more about the coastal threats coming up, so stay tuned for that. We're also going to talk about Myrtle, and we're going to talk about Columbia and Charlotte, and those are areas, areas in South Carolina. I've got on the screen right now just a single frame of the GFS. This will change 100 times. I actually kind of like that the time is obscured. It's an error. There's supposed to be a time on it, but it's kind of obscured. Makes it a little bit more generic, because what Sam is talking about is we've got some of the green for the rain mixing in, in some areas. Then we have this whole big solid blob of likely snow across a lot of, central North Carolina and portions of the Sandhills of South Carolina, blah, 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 blah. But then there's this little break that you were talking about over Elizabeth City. Is it going to be there the whole time? Probably not. But you can see almost like the storm is split in two with more snow offshore. So all of these parameters are going to matter, and that's a little bit why we don't have an exact snowfall total for right now, because we're still trying to figure out the timing of all these pieces. Let's bring in Greg. I see his face now backstage, so I think we should be able to see him now. Hey, Greg.
Oh, okay. All right. When I was looking at the preview here, it just had black. So let me try to tilt this on the car here. So
Greg, can you run in and get me a 2-piece combo for Eric Smithfield? I'll take Chad.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So,
Okay.
Greg, first of all, thank you for coming back to the Carolina Weather Group 2 weeks in a row. We try not to burden people with asking them for their time 2 weeks in a row, but it would be no lie that the comments demanded it. So here you are again talking about winter weather.
This is such a burden. I mean, you're really putting a lot on it.
But in all seriousness, yes, we had a lot of people very excited to see you last week. We know you've got your Facebook page, you've got your Patreon that you were telling us about. I've got it pulled up here on the screen that I can show people if they want even more Greg throughout the week. Patreon.com/fishweather, where I can see you've got a new post from about an hour ago called "Why North Carolina Coast is a Breeding Ground for Nor'easters." Can you give us a tease? Why is North Carolina Coast a breeding ground for nor'easters?
Yeah, every time there's an Arctic outbreak, we have a natural front along our coast. I was just looking at the RTOP sea surface temperature analysis from this morning, and you've got water temperatures in the Gulf Stream even this time of year in the 70s, and you have this that warm water is importing through what we call a sensible heat flux to the air above it, and so that warms the air above those warm waters. And then you have the really cold air inland, and you've got a natural boundary sitting there with all sorts of vorticity. And then you bring something in the upper atmosphere, and it stretches the vorticity, and bang, you have yourself a big cyclone.
Do you think we're going to be in, to use your word, bang, a big cyclone this weekend?
I mean, it sure looks like that. I think the impacts are the question mark at this point. I do remember, and this was in the late 70s when I was still at Penn State, that there was a shortwave that was diving out of eastern Canada, and it cut off over the middle part, or actually the northern part of Virginia, and it went between D.C. and Charlottesville. And at the same time, the D.C. was like 1/16 S plus. In Charlottesville, the sun was out. And I never forgot that the track of that upper level low is so critical. And, right now it looks like it's going in position for us. But what happens in a couple of days if the center goes over Raleigh as opposed to Columbia or Myrtle Beach, then all bets are off. It's a whole different ballgame at that point.
Yeah, I know it's Wednesday night right now as we're streaming live, and I keep giving out this context to keep people who are watching us back later, and I want to make sure they have a context to like when we are discussing the storm, right? Because it's obviously the information will change as we get to Thursday and as we get to Friday, and the picture becomes more accurate. What is the best accurate picture you have right now, Greg, of where some of the highest snowfall totals might be?
Oh, geez, the phone just
that's
fell off.
That's exactly how we feel.
That's how we feel.
All right. Well, usually when you have like a cutoff low, like at 700 millibars, that, the heaviest snowfall totals are just north and west of the center. That would put, central and northeastern North Carolina in the wheelhouse, if indeed that track, held true. It's hard for me to get down to specific towns and counties and that kind of stuff, because I always tell people that if there's a rain snow boundary and you take the line I draw on a map literally, you deserve to get wet. Because it's just, no, we're not good enough to be able to do that down to the mile. But I would certainly think that, maybe from Fayetteville, maybe northeastward toward Rocky Mount, Wilson, there's going to be a band in there that, should get quite a bit. And I just, I think I'm confident that there's going to be accumulating snow. It's just that the GFS has been absolutely outrageous totals over the last couple of days. And the European's been much more conservative. It's sort of hung in there around, 4 or 5, 6 inches, something like that. But
Frank's laughing. Frank's laughing because we were having
take a look at the
Euro,
18Z Euro if you get a
the
second.
Euro went a little nuts.
Oh, what is it doing now?
Oh, well, I'll just throw it on my screen share because why not?
Okay, should we give a disclaimer that this is a computer model, not a forecast?
Yeah, disclaimer. It's computer model. It's not. Well, it's fine. There's the Euro, and let's zoom in on the Carolinas.
I got to put your screen up. Here comes Frank's screen
Let's,
again.
look
This is just one
at,
hypothetical.
Snow total Kuchera through at the end of the run. There you go.
There,
That's the 18Z
I'll get
Euro.
it centered and I'll let go. There we go. There you
Oh,
go.
geez. Okay.
Wow.
So much for the conservative forecast, huh?
But I think it helps prove a point, right? Because literally, like, you looked at it earlier, and then it came out with an update, and it swung wildly, and that's still where we're at, right? We're still kind of fine tuning this thing.
Yes, exactly.
Let me go to 12Z so you can see how much less there was. Now, this is the Kuchera ratio, which is typically better than 10 to 1. It typically shows higher than 10 to 1 ratios, but sometimes it overdoes it a little bit. So we have to be careful using Kuchera ratio.
One thing I wanted to mention, so back in December of '89, for those of you that were in that area or in the area back then, there was a huge snowstorm in eastern North Carolina a couple of days before Christmas. And I remember this was back when they called it NMC, the National Meteorological Center. And this guy wrote a novel about 4 days before Christmas telling me all the reasons why there couldn't possibly be heavy snow. And the reasoning was that the boundary, there was bitterly cold air mass, the boundary was so far offshore that nobody thought that any development would ever reach the coast. And Steve Businger, who was a professor of meteorology at NC State back then, he's now at the University of Hawaii. I talked to him afterwards, and he said he thinks that the boundary reformed due to the sensible heat flux from the Gulf Stream. And so instead of the boundary being, or it's near the coast, that's where the cyclogenesis took place. And all of a sudden, bang, they've got 18 inches of snow at the coast of North Carolina. So I emailed him today and I said, do you see similarities with that same process as this one? And he said, absolutely.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was seeing some things before and I was like, is this reforming when it gets over the water? And that could make all the parameters move, right, Greg?
Right, exactly. Because when you look at some of the model forecasts, the initial low development is way offshore. And then all of a sudden it just takes off much closer to the coast. And, it sure seems, without delving into the details of the model, that's exactly what's happening, is that there's a lot of baroclinicity there, and that, you've got like 150 meter height falls at 500 going right over top of it. And that's a recipe for, rapid development.
My ESP says that Frank has some thoughts.
No, I'm just kind of nodding along to the geek talk from Greg there, and agreeing with him. But I'm afraid that some of our listeners and viewers may not be able
Sometimes
to
you
see
get really into the weeds. No.
Basically, we're saying really big, strong upper level system moving in, spawning low pressure near the surface, and causing a rapid intensification of that surface storm and throwing a lot of moisture going into the atmosphere because the waters are so warm offshore and getting pulled in and to that cold air and causing a lot of snow to fall. That's the basic.
That was a much better explanation. Thank you.
Well, Greg, let me ask you this, because someplace in one of your answers, you said that you think somewhere in, say, central North Carolina, there could be significant snowfall. And I think the three of us will agree that we're not going to hold you to a particular number. But can you just give us a vague idea of what significant means? What's the scale?
I'd be really surprised if there wasn't like a 3 to 5 inch snow at the absolute minimum, and then if everything goes exactly right and the perfect track, then it's not out of the realm of possibility that people could get over a foot out of this.
Yeah, very localized. It reminds me, I'm trying to think. See, growing up in New York, and I grew up in coastal New York, I feel like we talked a lot about banding. So like in my brain, it's a very natural part to be like whether or not my school district was going to be out or not. But I don't know, and maybe you guys can tell me like how often we deal with banding situations here. But I feel like maybe people would most remember that term in terms of like hurricanes, how those lows spin up waves of moisture. We're kind of talking about the same thing, but just frozen.
Now, when you have banding, is that instrumental in the forecast?
I would say so.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
How much snow in my backyard?
Can I bring up one interesting thing from this past weekend?
I
real
think
quick.
this is the place to do it. Yeah.
Okay. So I plotted the Greensboro sounding from 12Z on Sunday, and I took into account the station elevation at Greensboro. So 1,300 feet above the ground, it was minus 13.7, which is about 7 degrees Fahrenheit. 3,900 feet above the ground, it was 4. That's a 41 degree rise over a distance of a half a mile.
Ooh.
And so if you were in a helicopter at 1,300 feet above the ground and you went up a half a mile, the temperature would have gone up 41 degrees. I'm not sure I've ever seen an inversion that steep. Maybe I missed one along the way, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing anything like that before either. That's a heck of an inversion to have the temperature rise that much over that short a distance. And that was one of the reasons why we were so concerned about sleet, even though the low levels were kind of shallow. It just was that cold in that near surface sub-freezing layer that you might end up seeing sleet when otherwise you would not normally see sleet, because the frozen or the melted snowflakes, the raindrops that are falling through that just don't have time to freeze. But because it's so cold, they did, and you ended up getting a good bit of sleet in the triad.
And the weather service in in Raleigh mentioned the fact that there were several reports of light snow, even with those above freezing temperatures aloft, and they speculated that because it was minus 13 at about 950, that there were actually needles and columns forming at that elevation and falling.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That was happening here in Columbia too.
Really?
Two
Okay.
things that could have been going on there. One of them was, like you said, the needles and columns forming in that sub-freezing layer. But another theory that I saw on Twitter, I think it's reasonable, is that as the raindrops were falling and freezing, the outer layer of the raindrop froze before the inside of it did, and it caused pressure to build up, and that caused the ice pellet to fracture on its way down. And then maybe some rime formed on top of that. And so you end up getting these needly structures, which were actually raindrops that had frozen rather than snowflakes.
Now we're really getting into deep science now.
This is like
That's
winter weather inception.
fascinating.
Yeah, I want to say it was Eric Webb that maybe he retweeted. I'm not sure, but I think that was who I saw that posted that on Twitter or retweeted it. I'm not sure.
Wow.
I was just thinking as we were talking about last weekend, right? And lo and behold, we got a lot of sleet, and a lot of us got ice, but I think arguably we got maybe less ice than we feared.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we still had thousands of people without power, and especially Western North Carolina. I'm looking on this Wednesday night; they're mostly all been restored. I'm actually really grateful that our ice wasn't worse last weekend, because could you imagine going into a second event with continuously dangerously cold temperatures and still having to recover? That's the situation, right, Greg? That's happening in Tennessee and other portions of the Deep South.
Yeah, I saw some pictures from Tennessee that a friend of mine sent me the other day, and it looks like a war zone with the number of trees that are down and all that type of stuff. But if you look back last week, a couple of days before the event, the GFS had us in the bullseye in terms of liquid equivalent. We were right in the middle of that 1 to 2 inch band. And at RDU, unless the tipping bucket doesn't work right, they only picked up a half an inch of liquid equivalent, which was way less, than it looked like was going to fall. So that was a real saving grace that the QPF just didn't turn out to be anywhere near what it looked like it would be just a couple of days before the event.
Do you think there are lessons from last week that we can apply to this week?
I think the biggest lesson is, I had people coming up to me a week ago Monday and saying, are we really going to get 18 inches of snow? And I remember making the comment, I said, if it looks this good 4 or 5 days out, do you really think it's going to happen in reality? And I look at that the same way with the hurricane fan. Like, I'm a big fan of not putting the center line in there, because if you think about it, if forecast air in 5 days is over 100 miles, the line tells you where the storm won't be. So why would you want to show that?
Okay.
I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does, right? Because we have seen a trend in recent hurricane seasons to take the line off and just kind of show the cone. And so I think what you're saying is, don't give me the bullseye on, Fayetteville's going to get 14 inches of snow because it might end up being Hamlet.
Yeah. And I just don't understand. The only thing I can figure out is that these people that are putting deterministic forecasts, 3 or 4 or 5 days out with the worst case scenario, and they try to put a disclaimer on it by saying, this is not my forecast, it's just a model forecast. Well, why did you put it up? Okay, you put it up there to get attention and to try to monetize the drama. And to me, that is not a public service. That's self-service, to be perfectly blunt. But I don't know how we stop that. I mean, I think it's the cat's out of the bag, and I think a lot of people think that because they have access to all the models that we have access to, that qualifies them to, have a respected opinion. And I don't mean to get on my soapbox here, but it's like credentials used to mean something. I remember when I was at Penn State, I had my junior and senior year, but I never called myself a meteorologist until the ceremony was over and I had the diploma in my hand, because it meant something to me to have that. And I don't know. I think that's sort of gone away, not just with regard to meteorology, but with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole hour on that.
and have a lot of barbs thrown at us on social media, probably. And also get a lot of praise on social media, because you'll have a lot of people who agree with what Greg just said, and there are a lot of people who will hate what he just said. So.
Well,
it is what it is.
I will say we had a lot of comments last week after Greg's appearance about how happy they were to see Greg and his forecast. So, Greg, please plug your forecast. Where can people stay up to date with you in the days ahead, in the months ahead?
Well, there's a Facebook page which is sponsored by Blanton's Air Plumbing and Electric. It's an HVAC company in Fayetteville, and I think that's called the Official Weather and Other Stuff Facebook page. And then the Patreon thing is a subscription service where I take a much deeper dive into what's going on. And you can sign up for that, patreon.com/fishweather, all one word. And it's $3 a month. And if you don't like it or you find you're not using it, it's as easy to cancel as it is to sign up. So give it a shot. But again, if you're not using it or a lot of people, I think, subscribe to a lot of things and they realize they're not using it and they eventually, cancel it. I know.
Don't tell them that because I'm doing the same thing, Greg.
Please don't.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, there won't be an end to when they need weather
That's
forecasts.
right.
That's the good news, right? That service will be forever needed. Greg, you're obviously sitting in the car, so I want to be conscious of how long I keep you kidnapped in this parking lot. Is there any other thoughts you wanted to get in about what we could expect this weekend?
Not really. I did want to ask you if you had heard about the woman who had identical twins.
Okay.
No,
I hadn't heard of a woman who had identical twins.
Yeah, their names were in a mall, but she only had one picture in her pocketbook because when you've seen one, you've seen them all.
I'm going to need a sound effect board. I need a sound effect board.
I should have had my rim shot ready. I do have one.
Yeah, Sam.
But there would have
Being
been
the radio guy here.
If you had a rim shot, there would have been repercussions for that.
Yeah, probably so. No, I won't. I've got one or two here, but anyway, what to go there?
You got sound effects?
That was a ding.
Yeah. No, I don't have the rim shot. Yeah, $1.
All right. Well, Greg, you're welcome to stick around. And if you have someplace to drive to, you're also welcome to start driving, whatever you need to do.
I'll hang around. I really enjoy being with you guys.
All right.
And Greg, I'm looking forward to watching your video you just posted an hour ago because being one who grew up here on the Outer Banks, nor'easters are just a part of our lives, and to have that educational part and be able to kind of learn a little bit more about what I already know, which is dangerous enough as it is, to see that, to really get the science behind it really helps us tell the story out here from a news angle when we're covering these things. So thank you for that. I'm looking forward to watching that tonight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Frank, you gave us the big picture off the start of the show, but I don't know if we've had a chance to kind of drill into what South Carolina can expect to see. We have a video from Scotty Powell that I'll play with his thoughts from the Grand Strand, but I mean, are we talking about snow, Frank, far enough south into Columbia?
I think we're talking about snow over probably all of South Carolina. It's just a matter of how much. There will be less south than north. I've seen questions, will Charleston get snow? Will Florence get snow? Will X point in South Carolina get snow? The answer is probably yes. In Charleston, maybe it's just a dusting. Maybe you get an inch. Further north is, however, where we have the potential for some really significant snow, probably along and north of I-20. But that's really going to depend upon all these variables, the track of the storm, how intense, how much moisture it gets involved. And we don't really 100% know the answer to that yet. We have, some ideas. Like I said, the heavier snow probably ends up falling further north. The best, most likely, is in North Carolina, and the heaviest of all probably in eastern North Carolina. But will you see snow in South Carolina this weekend? Yes, I think you will. Will it actually cover the ground across the South and the Low Country? Maybe not. But further north, yes, and potentially deeper the further north and east you look.
I want to share another headline that I think also helps answer the question of will we see snow in South Carolina? Well, we might see snow in Tampa. So if we're going to have snow in Tampa, in this scenario, we're also talking about snow coming down in portions of Georgia and South Carolina. Now, I want to emphasize, Frank, your point was we don't know how much of it is going to stick versus just seeing it fall out of the sky, right?
Yeah, well, in Tampa, I can tell you exactly how much is going to stick, and that will be zero.
Yeah.
Snow in Tampa in this economy? I mean, come on.
Now, I can also tell you that despite the fact that there will not be any snow accumulation anywhere in Central Florida, I can tell you that the people who are being told that they might actually see a snowflake are really panicking right now.
Mhm.
They're just panicking over nothing. It's just they think they're going to see a snowflake, and but there's nothing to panic over except that it's going to be cold, which makes Floridians panic anyway.
Yeah,
They
well,
wear
they got
parkas when
they
it's
got a
50.
cold weather advisory, and it's 47 degrees there, which was like our high.
I've run a half marathon in that weather in Orlando at that temperature. Come on, please.
All right, well, Scotty Powell, a member of our Carolina Weather Group family and meteorologist over there at WBTW in Myrtle Beach, sent in this video with his thoughts about snow chances in the Grand Strand. Let's listen.
Hey everyone, I'm meteorologist Scotty Powell at WBTW and Carolina Weather Group, and just kind of give you a quick update about what's going on here across the Grand Strand and the PD. We are definitely watching the potential for a winter storm. Seems like we've been doing this about the last 3 weekends, and that threat continues this weekend as we are looking at the potential of seeing some snowfall, not only here in the PD and the border belt, but also into the Myrtle Beach area, Wilmington. All of those locations could experience some snowfall. Right now, it looks like it would be snow or nothing at all. It depends on the low pressure track. If that low pressure track is closer to the coast, which the European model is showing, we could see some heavy snow. If it's a little bit further out, we may not get much at all. And one other thing that I'm kind of worried about is the dry slide. And it seems like if you're a resident of Horry County, you remember back in 2018 where it snowed in Charleston, snowed in Wilmington, but that dry slide kind of just popped up over Horry County. So I'm worried a little bit about that, just to be honest with you. But kind of putting everything together, it definitely looks like a winter storm is possible across our area. And not only is it going to be snowfall, but we are also going to see some pretty chilly temperatures. In fact, temperatures on Saturday night going into Sunday morning will be in the teens with some gusty winds behind this low pressure system. We could see wind chills near zero. On Sunday, temperatures don't warm above freezing at all. So whatever does fall will likely be sticking around. And Sunday night into Monday morning, another night of temperatures in the teens, single digits possible in a few other locations. And we don't warm up much on Monday either, maybe mid to upper 30s if we're lucky. It's not until we get later into the week that we start to warm up. But whatever does fall would be likely sticking around. So not ready for any accumulation models or things like that, but we are definitely watching the potential for a winter weather event here across the Grand Strand and the PD, as well as Southeast North Carolina. And it likely could bring some impacts. The winter storm severity index has moderate impacts for Horry County and everybody else along the border belt into the PD. So we are preparing for a winter weather event, potentially some snow falling in the area. Don't worry. If it snows here, we will keep you updated. We'll definitely show you those snowy pictures on the beach. So for now, I'm meteorologist Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach.
All right, so at the risk of sounding like we're repeating ourselves, Scotty, when he zeroes in on the greater Myrtle Beach area, is having the same concerns, the same questions as Sam on the Outer Banks or Frank in Columbia or Greg in the Raleigh area. It's the timing, it's the track, it's the location, and I would say that's much of the same here in Charlotte too. You know, maybe on the upper end we're talking 3 to 5 inches, but it's going to depend on a lot of the setup. Greg has a question or a statement. I'm not sure which it is.
I'm so glad that he brought up the dry slot because there's a favored, as you know, temperature range for the formation of dendrites, snowflakes. And on the buff kit forecast off the GFS, there was some dry air just above that layer. And it looked like it was trying to, drop down in there just a little bit. So that is one thing I learned a long time ago is the dry air and the dendritic growth zone don't mix real well if you're trying to get a big snowstorm. So that is definitely worth watching, although usually when a cutoff goes to your south, you don't have to worry about that. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
The other thing he brought up, and I don't know if he emphasized this, is last weekend we were talking about all sorts of different precipitation types: rain, snow, sleet, freezing rain. I mean, this is either like snow or nothing, right, Greg? It's like it's just that cold.
Exactly, and that it's nice to have one of those question marks off the table. But the thing about it is, if you forecast rain and you think it's going to rain a quarter of it, it's 3/4 and it rains a quarter, nobody seems to care. But if you're off on snow amounts, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. There definitely seems to be a really deep social science, whether it's snow anxiety or snow excitement or whatever it is. The expectations are so much higher. Sam, the other factor that I want to get in before we move to a few other headlines, you mentioned earlier in the show, Sam, some of the coastal risks that you guys are going to have with this low pressure offshore during full moon, coastal high tide. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So, and thankfully, we have not had to deal with a powerful nor'easter in a couple of months. If you go back to what we were dealing with in September and October along the Outer Banks, and specifically Hatteras Island and Ocracoke, with repeated onshore blows, repeated nor'easters, even Hurricane Aaron, and then the combo of our H and I storms, I think it was, that passed offshore. We were dealing with some pretty significant impacts. We had houses collapsing in a small stretch of beach in Buxton. Highway 12 was closed quite a few times. Ferries weren't able to run between Ocracoke and the mainland and Ocracoke and Hatteras. And it's been a while since we've had to really be concerned about that, even though we've had a couple of storms that have had me thinking what's going on and asking and making sure with the National Weather Service and others, are we going to deal with it? And you say, no, it's not long enough, not over a large enough size of the ocean to cause issues. This time it doesn't look that way. We're talking to this, and I mentioned it earlier, 50 knots, maybe even 60 knots over the open waters just off Hatteras Island. That's a pretty significant blow, and depending on what direction that comes, is going to dictate whether we're seeing oceanside impacts. We do have a little higher lunar tide. We're catching a break. We don't have a king tide, which is a perigean spring tide, which is when the moon is in its closest point to the Earth in its orbit, and it's a full moon. We don't have another one of those until mid-April. But we got perigee is tomorrow night, Friday night. Full moon is on Monday. So we are going to have a little bit higher than normal lunar tides. So 2 to 3 hours either side of high tide, throw about a 60-knot wind offshore. That's the obvious ingredients to create ocean overwash, especially on the east-facing beaches, maybe the northeastern-facing beaches as you get up towards the northern Outer Banks. But the east-facing beaches that pretty much compose everything south of Oregon Inlet and Hatteras Island. And if you're watching on video right now, you'll see a shot of what's known as the Canal Zone. That is an area just south of the Bass Knight Bridge in Oregon Inlet. That area was, one of the places we saw a huge overwash back with our October storms and our late September storms. The dunes you see on the left are man-made. DOT is out there moving that sand all the time. In fact, a week ago on the weekend, we had tan out because the wind was blowing so hard out of the northeast with that storm last week, it was causing near zero visibility as you drove down Highway 12, blowing that dry sand before we got precipitation. So it was just like trying to drive through a blizzard, whiteout conditions. Call it a tan out because it was sand. And as you move on down the beach, we've got other areas all along Highway 12 in these hot spots. I did talk to the NCDOT spokesperson earlier today, Tim Haas, for Division 1 and the Ferry Division. He said they've been able to make real good progress in not only getting the sand built back up. You've got a couple of sandbag projects that have taken place. They've been able to shore those up on Ocracoke. They've been able to get some of the pavement along Highway 12 repaired, because even though there's not been any damage to the road itself, there has been enough overwash periods that it has started to cause the shoulder to crumble, the edge of the pavement to crumble. So they've been able to make some repairs there. They've been able to rebuild their sand supply, because they do keep a huge amount of sand right on that, just behind that camera almost, up by the Bass Knight Bridge right at Oregon Inlet, that they're able to go and truck sand from there down and fill in where the dunes get washed out. So they've been able to build that sand bank back up. to be ready for anything. And, Frank and I, we talked about it last week. We talked about it on the Sunday special, the fact that we are going into a pattern now, it looks like, where we may be in more of a more favorable overall pattern for more nor'easters. We haven't had to deal with that for the last 3 months, thankfully, because we really thought this was going to be a bad winter for Buxton with all those houses that went in back in the early fall, going into a beach nourishment cycle coming up this spring. We're going to have to wait that out. It looks like things are going to get worse, but we are concerned about this one because we're going to get probably 3, maybe 4 high tides at least, where we're going to have those waves of 10 to 12 feet, maybe even higher. I'm not surprised. I won't be surprised to see Friday some high surf advisories and definitely some coastal flood advisories, maybe some coastal flood watches issued ahead of this, on top of the winter storm watches.
So many things on the table. I think that was the Saturday special. I don't know what day it is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you,
ran together.
Sam Walker did a fabulous job giving us lots of updates last week on the Carolina Weather Group, and he's going to be cashing back in on us supporting him now, as he's going to potentially be in one of those bullseyes. So hopefully you continue to follow us here in the Carolina Weather Group with these resources across the Carolinas so that we can bring you those localized expertise and updates throughout the week. Our Carolina WeatherNet continuing to stream with real-time updates around the clock. So we'll put a pin in the winter weather for now, and we'll roll Frank's favorite segment. You would think his favorite segment is Storytime with Frank, but I know he has 87 tabs open on his computer right now, so he's been anxious to close them, and he can't do it until he's with us.
Actually, only about 15, maybe 18 altogether at this point. Now, earlier today, yes, there was something like 80, but right now, it's only 15 or 16. My first one, though, actually, there are a few that'll go together, and we need to talk a little bit about snow to liquid ratio because of what's going to happen with the storm, because it's going to be much colder than it usually is during a snowstorm. Of course, we're North and South Carolinians. If it's snowing, we're probably freezing our tails off. But it's going to be even colder than usual during this upcoming winter storm, which is going to be mainly snow. And the temperatures matter because when it's going to be as cold as what we expect, first you get the dry, fluffy, powdery snow that I was telling you about, but also the snow to liquid ratio is going to be higher than usual. Well, what am I talking about? Well, rule of thumb, usually when you have a snowstorm, on average, typically, about 10 inches of snow will melt down to 1 inch of liquid water. And so that's your typical snow to liquid ratio is 10 to 1. So in the example here brought up by Brad Panovich, WCNC meteorologist, he's talking about 1/10 of an inch of liquid resulting in 1 inch of snow when the snow to liquid ratio is 10 to 1. And again, that's your rule of thumb. But here, that rule of thumb doesn't usually work out because it's usually on the warm side when you get winter storms in the Carolinas. So at least outside the mountains, 10 to 1 usually works okay in the mountains, but outside the mountains, not so much. Our snow to liquid ratio is in South Carolina, it's typically like 7 or 8 to 1. In the low country, it might be even lower than that. 9 or maybe 10 to 1 as you go northward into North Carolina. But the bottom line is the snow to liquid ratio is typically a little lower because you're usually on the warm side. And so you're less likely to get those dendrites. You're more likely to see the snow maybe partially melt before it hits the ground or some of it melting on contact. And so that snow to liquid ratio is going to usually be lower here. And you'll get more like, again, 7 or 8 to 1. And so you can get, 7 inches of snow, but that can still be an inch of melted precipitation. Well, in this particular case this weekend, because it's going to be so cold, and not so much at the surface, that does matter a little bit, but aloft, temperature and humidity aloft is what really matters for the snow to liquid ratio, and getting to what you Greg mentioned earlier, to having a good chunk of the atmosphere aloft in that dendritic growth zone where you have some really fluffy snow that results in a high snow to liquid ratio being created in the clouds, and then of course falling down to the earth. And so our snow to liquid ratios for this storm are probably going to be above 10 to 1, maybe even 15 to 1, which means that you would not have to have as much melted precipitation fall to get a good bit of snow. So in this case, a tenth of an inch of liquid water would be an inch and a half of snow. Or what we probably will see with this storm is like 4 or 5, maybe 6/10 of an inch, being 8, 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 inches of snow, whereas it would normally be 6 or 7, maybe 8 inches at most of snow with that amount, and maybe even less than that. It may even be 4 or 5 inches, depending upon exactly what the temperatures are at the surface and aloft. So let me demonstrate this by showing some models. Okay, here's the Euro. Again, I showed this earlier. Let me show the straight 10-to-1 first. Okay, this is just simply taking the liquid precipitation that falls and multiplying it by 10 to give you a prediction of snow using that 10-to-1 snow to liquid ratio. So this is showing 3 to 4 inches over a lot of South Carolina, maybe 5 in a few spots. Where there's more precipitation, eastern North Carolina, there's a kind of a 6 to 8 inch area there. Now, let me switch us over to the Kuchera method. Kuchera, named after Evan Kuchera, an Air Force meteorologist who created an algorithm some years ago to help better predict these snow to liquid ratios. His method predicts higher snow to liquid ratios, and so you end up with more snow accumulation, giving the same amount of precipitation actually falling, melted down. So in this particular case, you have 5 to 8, locally 9 inches of snow over the northern part of South Carolina, parts of the low country getting 6. And over in eastern North Carolina, you get double-digit amounts because that snow to liquid ratio is probably going to be pretty high. Now, again, this is based on the European model's forecast. This is not your actual weather forecast. This is what comes out of a model. I can guarantee you that will not look exactly like this come Sunday afternoon. There will not be this much snow on the ground. It may be more, maybe less. Probably will be less, but exactly how this comes together is hard to say. The point I'm trying to illustrate is those snow to liquid ratios that in a 10-to-1 situation, this is as much as you could expect to see from the given amount of precipitation the model's showing compared to the higher snow to liquid ratios that we're going to see with this storm. And of course, the snow that'll be on the ground will be the dry, fluffy, powdery type, which will blow around some thanks to the winds that'll be picking up during the storm and the unusual blowing snow, drifting snow situation here in the Carolinas that we don't often see.
Yeah, that's why Sam was talking about that blizzard warning before, because blizzard is defined by visibility, and wind will have a factor in that. Should I take the next tab, or
Yes.
do you want to carry on? Okay. All right. Well, my next tab sticks with the cold weather theme, but it switches it over to space. So let me take Frank's screen down, and because there's another big space headline happening right now that is going to be influenced by this cold weather, and that is the fact that NASA has Artemis out there on the launch pad because the launch opportunities for Artemis begin in that first weekend in February, just a little bit more than a week away. But take a look at this, because there are weather restrictions for launching. And what are the weather restrictions for the SLS rocket? Well, they're hoping to do a wet dress rehearsal this weekend. And according to their documents there at NASA, they cannot initiate fueling or tanking the rocket if the 24-hour temperature at both 132 feet up and 257 feet up is less than 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, let's just go ahead and look at the forecast here. They're hoping to do that wet dress rehearsal this weekend, with a low on Saturday night is 27 degrees in Florida. I mean, I think we'd all agree that 27 is cold just about anywhere, but especially in Florida. And on this, anniversary of the Challenger explosion, I think we're all thinking a lot about what cold weather can do to rockets out there on the launch pad. So it'll be really interesting, I think, to see if they go ahead or not with this weekend's planned dress rehearsal. That might determine whether or not we can actually get any of these launch opportunities in for next week. We're all still waiting to hear exactly if NASA is going to try this first weekend in February. And there was a tweet yesterday on Tuesday from somebody that says like who's excited? Why aren't we talking more about this? And NASA did respond to this person on X, and NASA wrote, "We're glad that you're excited for Artemis 2. Though February 6th marks the start of launch opportunities, it is not our confirmed launch date. Artemis 2 currently has multiple opportunities to launch throughout the spring. So as recently as this morning, they would not let on whether or not they are committing to that first launch opportunity on Friday, February 6th. Their official explanation has just been pending the success of the wet dress rehearsal this weekend. So we will all watch that anxiously to see what happens. Also, while I was over here on X, I noticed that one of the trends, it's gone now, but it was just there a minute ago. One of the trends on X tonight was just quote Greg unquote. And I assume it's because Greg's on our show tonight that all of X was talking about that and not something else that was super scary that I don't know anything about yet. But Greg, congratulations on trending on X. It's a real achievement.
Are you sure that's what it's about?
No, I was almost afraid to find out, as I am with most trends.
Yeah.
Oh,
It just said Greg. It didn't have a last name. Do you know any Gregs that go by just their first name, like Prince, but like Greg?
Not offhand, but I mean, if you ignore the last name, there are a lot of possibilities out there.
There's a lot of people named Greg making news today, apparently. So congratulations on that. Frank, do I volley back to you, or do other people have to? I don't think Greg has any tabs in his Toyota, but Greg, but Frank might.
Sure, circle back to me. Okay, so let's talk about, since we want to talk about snow totals and we want to talk about possibilities of where it may go. So let's look at an ensemble for a minute. I've talked about ensembles before. What they are is just simply a base model like the GFS or the European or the Canadian model, and you run them a bunch of different times with a slight tweak to the input for each one. A degree Fahrenheit in temperature, or 1 mile an hour difference in wind speed in a few places. Those are the kind of tweaks we'll make. And the reason we do that is to see the range of possibilities and also to get an idea of how well the model is predicting what might happen. So I have here the European ensemble. First, the main model, in this case the Euro, is one of the ensemble members, but we also have 50 other runs of the European model with slightly tweaked initial conditions going into the model to show you the range of possibilities. And as you can see, there's a lot. James, about zooming in on that.
You want me to zoom in? All right.
Yeah. So, okay. So they're all showing snow. Almost all of them are showing snow. Some of them are showing a pretty substantial snowstorm, and this is a 10-to-1 ratio. This is not considering the fact that those snow to liquid ratio may be pretty high for this storm. So the European model, and some of them are really blitzing eastern North Carolina with double digit, even some maybe even 20 plus on member number 1 there. There's one that's blasting us here in Columbia with like 15 inches of snow. There's one that's blasting Raleigh in a little band there. From looks like Monroe all to Raleigh to Norfolk there, getting 15 inches or so. And that's just the first 25. There's 25 more. There they are. Some of them show the I-77 corridor in Charlotte and the Catawba region in South Carolina getting swamped with snow. There's another one showing Raleigh and North and not a whole lot in South Carolina. So there are a bunch of different possibilities that the ensemble shows, given the way things may work out, given, again, the storm track, the available moisture, how quickly the storm winds up, how much Atlantic moisture it can manage to grab hold of before it moves out to sea. Those are all questions that pertain to this. And the ensembles give us an idea of the range of possibilities. And so, there's the potential there for snow and a lot of it, but it's still not a guarantee, because if you look at each ensemble member, some show that maybe not much snow at all falls. Like for example, number 46 here, it blitzes Sam pretty good, but the rest of the Carolinas don't really see a whole lot, 2, 3, maybe 4 inches. And now they're in the low country of South Carolina, little or none, maybe not even a dusting. So all those realistic possibilities that should coalesce around a more coherent solution over the next 48 hours as we get closer to the event.
Until then, we live in the multi-universe, and they all exist simultaneously, right, Greg?
Yeah, it's Schrodinger's snow map.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I I've had a concern about how the public responds to ensembles and the word uncertainty. Um, and this was a major technological advancement when we got the computing power to be able to run 50 members and time in history be able to quantify the amount of uncertainty in a forecast. And I'm afraid that when the public hears the word uncertainty, they say, well, you didn't used to use that word. You used to make a commitment to a number or an amount, and now you're being wishy-washy. And I'm not sure they understand that this is a huge advancement in our science. And I would rather be able to express the amount of uncertainty in a forecast uncertain than pretend to be committed to something that I don't have high confidence in. I think the public benefits from that honest assessment of we're not sure to we really are sure.
Right, and the thing that's changed from back in the day is that we used to be wrong a lot. Is we would commit to a solution and then we'd end up being wrong.
Right. Yes.
Now we're not wrong so much, and our perception, the public perception of what we do has gotten better because we can show that there's a range of possibilities. Right now, expressing uncertainty is really hard. And the public oftentimes, when they hear us talk about what uncertainty is, they think, well, they don't really know what's going to happen, do they?
Right.
Well, we do know what's going to happen. It's going to be a snowstorm. We just don't have much yet. So what we're trying to do, and maybe the best way to do this is to kind of throw, not throw a bunch of stats at the public and per se, but to use the stats you get from these ensembles in our head, like, okay, what's the 50th percentile here? What's the top of the bell curve,
right,
the most likely amount? And maybe a standard deviation either side of that is your range, maybe, or something close to that. And that's what you're saying is most likely. But point out there are other possibilities, but that's what's most likely, and that's probably the best way to handle it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Again, communicating that is the biggest challenge of it all, I think. And it doesn't matter how good your forecast is. You can say there's going to be 6.8 inches of snow tomorrow, and if you turn out to be exactly right, that's great. But you're not going to. It's not going to work. You're not going to hit it with that precision. You're going to have to use a range because there's not going to be probably 6.8 inches of snow tomorrow.
And I often felt that way about expressing the normal high and low. Is we all know the weather's different every year, and to assign a specific value to the normal always seemed to me to be a little bit confusing. So it's like, why don't we like if the normal high in Raleigh is 50 in January, why don't we say anything from 45 to 55 would be what you would expect in this part of the country this time of year? If it's outside of that, then you can say that it's, much above or much below normal.
Yeah, we might be doing a little bit of a disservice by calling a moving 30-year average to be normal. I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. And that's a conversation I've had with people, including Brad Panovich, on social media over the years. It's like what we call it normal the last 30 years. Last 30 period, the end of or the 30-year period that ends with the last year ending with a zero, as what's normal. But that's just an average over that 30-year period. It's not really
right.
What's normal. What's normal in Columbia, South Carolina in January can range from a high of 32 degrees with a couple of inches of snow to a high of 70 degrees with bright sunshine, or even higher than that, even warmer than that. So all those things happen. In Columbia, you see a lot more of those 70-degree days in January than you do 32-degree and snow days. But they all happen, and all normal for that to happen. But there's the average that doesn't happen really very often if you think about
right.
it, which is 58 for a high and like 34 for a low this Columbia. You don't see that hardly at all, but that's the average.
Right.
Again, talking about what's normal is again challenging thing to do, especially when what is defined scientifically officially is as normal. It's just an average of a recent 30-year period,
Right.
and that 30-year period might not be representative. Like if you look at the normals from 1951 to 1980, you're going to get a radically different, well, maybe not radically, but a significantly different value than what you would get for the current normals period, which is 1991 to 2020.
Right. Yep. Well said.
I think Sam's got something he wants to share as a tab before he runs here at 10:30.
Yeah.
Because I know you've got some visitors in the background. So Blizzard is kind of
Yeah, we got visitors. I got a whole house full of chaos that just walked in. So,
Sam, what is it that you wanted to show us?
I just wanted to throw the last time we had a blizzard warning in the state of North Carolina. Well, it's not all that often it happens. And in fact, the funny part about the last time it happened in North Carolina, it just happens to be where I am in Currituck County, and also Camden and Pasquotank here in the northeast corner at 2018. That is the only time that we have ever seen a blizzard warning issued by the Wakefield National Weather Service office. And they did do another graphic that shows how many days since the last blizzard warning was issued by particular National Weather Service offices. And this was valid as of today. 1,460 days. 48 days for Blacksburg, 487 for Sterling. For GSP, 5,830.
I think that the only time GSP has ever issued a blizzard warning was for the 93 blizzard.
Right.
And it was only in North Carolina. They didn't put it out in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, there has never been a blizzard warning issued in South Carolina. To my knowledge, there's only been one storm that caused actual verifiable blizzard conditions, which was the 1973 storm, and that happened at the Florence Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just barely. I mean, it wasn't sustained. It was frequent gusts to the 35 plus.
Like I said, we get more tan outs than white outs out here. I mean, seriously, we could have a blizzard warning if you wanted to get technical about it for, a 50-mile, if a sand, with those sand dunes out there. So
the question is, what's the criteria for the blizzard? This just came in from YouTube chat.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Frank, did you just say at 35 miles an hour?
Yes, you have to have sustained or frequent gusts to 35 miles per hour for at least 3 hours. You also have to have 1/4 mile visibility or less in heavy snow. All that has to be occurring at the same time for at least 3 hours.
And there's no snowfall accumulation depth requirement. It's all about visibility, right? Okay.
Correct. If you get 1/4 mile visibility for at least 3 hours, it doesn't matter whether you see 30 inches of snow from that storm or whether you only see 4. That still counts as a blizzard if you get those high winds and the heavy snow at the same time for at least 3 hours.
Gotcha. All right, we are dangerously coming up at the 90-minute mark. So my last question is for Greg. What is the loitering rule on the parking lot that you're doing?
That's a really good question. I'm down here in the Quay. Do you know what the Quay is?
Fuquay.
The Fuquay Varina. No, excuse me, Fuquay Varina.
Right. Do you know the first hate mail I ever came from Fuquay? I did.
That has nothing to do with why you're there tonight, right?
No, but I had no idea there was a drought in progress. And my first weekend on the air, I said, "Great weekend coming up, plenty of sun, plenty of heat, and no rain." And this farmer wrote me a note and he said, "Fire this meteorologist. Is he oblivious to what's going on around him, living in a 6x6 cell block with no windows?" And I went into the news director. I had tears coming down my face, and he said, "Greg, you got to thicken that skin. You got to get a lot of this."
Well, it sounds like people were so nice back then too. All right. Well, we hope everybody is prepared for some more winter weather. Try to make it as fun as possible. The temperatures are still going to be cold. So the same thing we said last week. Have a way to safely heat your home, non-electric, that, again, is safe. don't open the stove, don't bring the barbecue inside. Those are not good ways. Move that electric heater away from other pieces of furniture and curtains and so on and so forth, because it's going to be cold one way or the other. We've got some school districts on Thursday that are delayed either because of temperatures or because of lingering ice problems and some of the shade and so on and so forth. And we'll see what Monday holds. But Greg, do know that you have a standing invite anytime. We'd love to see you back on here, but you got to bring food for the rest of us next time.
Well, I really appreciate you guys including me here because that I miss. I used to go to conferences all the time when I was at WRAL, and I missed that interaction with other weather people. And this has been a real godsend this week. So thank you very much.
Of course, Greg is the man. Kevin writes on YouTube. So, like I said. The comments love you. And Sam, best of luck out there in the Outer Banks. Who I'm sure we'll be hearing from you. And Frank, snow angels. I want to see lots of snow angels.
Yes,
I'll make it happen if we do end up getting enough snow here.
Before we go, there was one corner that we didn't talk about, and that was the Triad. And Scotty Powell, is a big NASCAR guy, and they've got a race up there in Winston-Salem. So let's listen to his thoughts on whether or not it could be snowing at this race this weekend in Winston-Salem.
Hey everyone, the NASCAR Cup Series starts again this week at the Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The Cookout Clash is supposed to be taking place on Sunday evening with pre-race activities starting on Saturday. Well, the big story is the winter weather, and right now looks like the forecast for the Winston-Salem area looks to bring some snow to the Bowman Gray area as we go throughout the day on Saturday and Saturday evening, lasting into Sunday morning. Accumulation is not known just yet, but it looks like we could see some accumulating snow. And not only that, but the cold temperatures as well. Temperatures are only going to make it out of the, not going to make it out of the upper 20s with wind chills well into the teens. And even overnight, Sunday night, temperatures dropping into the teens and single digits with wind chills near zero. So it is going to be a very cold couple of days for the NASCAR Cookout Clash. There are some talks right now what's going to happen with that, because even if they get the track cleaned off with snow, there's still the parking lots, there's still the parking issues, and just the overall safety for the city of Winston-Salem and the ice-covered roadways where we are still seeing icy conditions from this past weekend storm. So we'll keep you up to date with any scheduled changes, but right now, last I've heard, the race is on for this weekend. Just expect to see some cold conditions over the weekend. If you are heading there Saturday, watch for some snow as we get into Sunday. We will see partly cloudy skies, but again, temperatures staying below 30 degrees. So definitely want to bundle up in multiple layers, stay warm out there, cover any exposed skin because hypothermia will become an issue, especially with our wind chills being in the single digits. So that's it for the NASCAR Cup Series, the Cookout Clash, as we start off the new 2026 NASCAR season in Winston-Salem. Hard to believe we're starting it off with the potential of snow falling in the area. Here's a look at that for you.
That sounds really, really brutally cold. I think Stormy the Weather Cat is there making
There
an
she
appearance
is.
Before we go. There she is.
Everybody say hi, Stormy.
And we had one shout out from Kay Smith on YouTube. Frank, pets to Stormy. Kay Smith also asking, where's Jared been? He's doing just fine. We hope to see him again soon. Worst case for you in Charleston, a couple flakes fall, maybe a light coating. And that's kind of the case, I think, universally across the area. If you're joining us, do rewind the rest of the show for more insights. But everyone's got a chance of seeing some flakes. Some of us have a chance of them sticking around for a little while at some pretty good depth. And there's certainly drawing out some memories, as Mary wrote. I was 6 years old in '89, and it was a huge core memory talking about that snowstorm, comparing all the snows to that one. I would love a repeat so my kids can experience it. And that, I think, will be my closing thought, because that's kind of a warm, joyful envision of the kids having safe fun out there in the snow. If you're watching us right now on the Carolina Weather Group YouTube, stay tuned. We're going to take you over to the Carolina Weather Net, where you can continue to see real-time conditions across the Carolinas. If you're listening or watching us later, hopefully you'll check us out over there on YouTube. Greg's got a Patreon page, and Frank's got a great newsletter that you could also check out for weather around the clock. But on behalf of Sam and the rest of our crew, I'm James Brierton here in Charlotte. We will talk to you again real soon. Be well and have a good night.